Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today, I want to share with you what I think are the three most crucial things that you can do anytime you go to a new body of water. These three things will help you break down that body of water faster and help you catch more fish. It's something that we see going on right now. If you happen to be watching a lot of the team series events that Major League Fishing is doing, you get to watch top level anglers get thrown onto a new body of water with zero practice. They don't even know what lake they're fishing when they get out on the body of water. And it's really interesting to hear a lot of these anglers kind of talk through what it is that they're looking for. And it's a situation that a lot of times the viewers don't ever get to experience. You know, when you watch tournaments take place at the highest level, you're watching anglers on live TV, but they've already had multiple days of practice. They already know what their game plan is. When you watch the team series events, you get to see the anglers literally break down and compute what they're doing. And in a lot of these instances, they're actually talking out loud to their team partner and they're trying to break it down. So you hear two anglers actually talking about what they're identifying, what they're seeing, and making adjustments based off of that. So I thought that was really cool. And many of the things that they're talking about relate back to the three things that I want to address today. Today's video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app. This has had an amazing new update. As you guys know, I love the water clarity feature. As you can see right here, we're looking at Grand Lake, which just had a whole pile of rain come into it. It went from being really clear to having a lot of dirty water coming in the bottom end of it. Just an amazing feature to be able to determine where the clear water is versus the muddy water. So Deep Dive has just also introduced stream flow. Now this is a really cool feature that shows all of the water input coming into certain reservoirs and the amount of water coming in. So they measure it in cubic feet per second. You can see in this case, this is just a small creek, but then you can see the projected as well as the previous flows. If we move up the lake here, get into one of the larger rivers coming in, you can see here that we've got 490 cubic feet per second. And then it shows you that there's not much of a change expected. Now, if there's some rainfall coming, I'm sure those projections will change. If we scoot on over here to take a look at Kentucky Lake and Barkley Lake, much larger river systems, the Tennessee River, you can see what the projected outflow is going to be there, 28,000 cubic feet per second. Go check the Cumberland River here. We got 9.4 thousand cubic feet per second. Just an amazing feature that allows you to see all of the different water flows coming into the different parts of the lake. You can see which ones might be the most affected, which ones won't be affected, see what the projected outflow schedules are. A major feature to help you catch more fish. And that's on top of some of the other new features like the wind effects. Now, the wind effects is really cool because we've had wind effects as part of the app in the past, but all it did is show where the wind was hitting the shoreline the most, as you can see from the dots, the orange and bright red dots, which indicate where the wind is really striking. But now the wind feature also indicates what the wave action is like on the lake itself. So some of the features you're going to get from this is determining where to get from place to place safely by avoiding the heavy, rough water conditions. You'll be able to determine where you may have some of the strongest current flow and some of the places where you can fish to stay protected. Now, along with that, you still have some of my favorite features like the patterns that you've got on the lake that indicate the best baits and lures to fish with. You've also got the water inflow app, which shows you where a bunch of the rain input comes in. That can be an amazing pattern to fish throughout the year. Just a great feature to have. So many positive features anytime you're fishing or using the Deep Dive app. Just points you in the right direction to catch more fish. Whether you're a tournament angler or a local fun fisherman that's just out to catch a few fish, the Deep Dive app will help you catch more fish next time you're out on the water. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is vegetation. You need to look for vegetation. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily need to fish the vegetation, but you want to evaluate the lake that you're on to see if there is vegetation, either submergent or emergent. And once you identify that there is or isn't, you can look to see what types there are. And so as an example, what I want to point out here is if you happen to go to a new body of water and you start looking around for submergent grass, so grass that grows below the surface. If you don't see any, what that means is the fish are going to relate to different cover. If there is submergent grass, there is going to be a very large portion of the bass fishery that relates specifically to that grass. So if there's no grass, you're probably talking about a lot of your hard targets becoming much more valuable at that point. So hard targets could be your stumps, they could be lay down trees, dock posts, it could be rock on the bottom, it could be shell bars, it could be things like that. But as soon as you remove the grass, the fish relate to other objects. If you have grass, you know the grass is going to be a major player. So at that point, you want to break down that grass. Is the grass coontail? Is it milfoil? Is it, lily pads? Is it growing only out to 4 feet deep and then stops? Is it growing out to 25 feet and then stops? You want to try to identify what the grass is doing, and that helps you break down where the fish are at. Generally speaking, if you're on a lake that has grass, I'm going to be willing to say over half the population of bass will be at the deepest level that grass grows and shallower. So if the outside weed line is 12 feet of water, that really means you can concentrate on that 12-foot line and fish shallower from there. So you just knocked out a whole bunch of the lake. It also plays from a standpoint of being emergent grass, meaning maybe the only grass in the lake is emergent, like lily pads and cattails and things like that. Well, if you've got cattails and they're only in this much water, probably not going to be a major factor, so you can write it off. If you've got lily pads, there's probably going to be a portion of fish that relate to the lily pads as well. My point here is, one of the first things you should do when you get to the lake is look specifically at whether or not that lake has emergent or submergent grass, and if it does, break down the different types within that, utilize that information to help you identify where a good portion of the fishery is, or the fish are going to be relating. If it doesn't, you can take that out of the equation and start looking more for your hard target objects. So that's the first thing I like to look for, is vegetation. The second thing that I like to look for is always going to be your rock. Rock is just another thing similar to vegetation that the fish will always relate to. Now, when I say rock, I'm really talking about hard bottom. That hard bottom could be shell beds, it could be gravel bars, it could be big boulders. It's hard bottom. And in some cases, it actually is just hard packed sand. If you happen to be on river fisheries or places where you have a lot of really soft bottom areas, the type of stuff you'd step in and sink down 2 feet, the hard bottom like sand can be a major player because there's just not rock in those areas, but that hard compacted sand gives the fish a place to spawn. It gives the fish a place just to sit and have fresh water moving over it. And that's one of the things that hard bottom generally indicates, is you've got some sort of water movement that keeps that silt from falling in those areas. And if you've got water movement, it generally means that you've got forage that are coming to you or being brought to those fish. So it's really important to identify. But hard bottom areas, in my opinion, outside of vegetation, are the next most important thing to look for anytime you're talking about bass fishing. So if you can identify it using your, say, side imaging or your electronics, more power to you. At the same time, you don't necessarily have to have electronics to find your hard bottom areas. You can start looking for classic places that, as I just indicated, have fresh water being brought over. Your points, your riprap banks, your dam areas, your bridge areas, things like that, where you can access it even from the bank in a lot of instances. But you're almost always going to have a fishable population of fish that relate to those hard bottom areas. The third thing that you want to try to identify and break down as fast as possible is forage. And forage has a couple of different variations here. So the first forage, or part to forage, is what are the fish feeding on? What is in that lake that the fish actually will use to feed on? Does it have shad? If it has shad, what type of shad? Does it have a good crayfish population? Does it have a good panfish population? Does it have other types of forage that can come into play? Maybe it's got a bunch of tadpoles, maybe it's got a bunch of frogs, things like that. So obviously, it's always good to know what the fish are keying in on. But even within that, you want to know where the forage is related. So as an example, one thing that I heard anglers talking about today during the team series while I was watching it is that once they got outside of the weed line on the lake they're fishing, they didn't see any balls of bait out suspended in the middle of the lake. All of the bait they were seeing was actually up shallower from the weed line shallower, which goes along with what I said earlier today, where in fisheries that have good submergent vegetation, a majority of that population of not just bass, but fish relate to it. So bait fish count as that. And if the bait fish are in the grass, the bass are going to be in the grass. But what they were analyzing was they saw the bait shallower in the grass, 12 foot of water or less. As soon as they started going out into the open water, the deeper water, there was no bait. So it's really important to try to break down not just type of bait, but where is that bait located? Are they up shallow? Are they out deep? And you can say, well, okay, they feed on bluegill, so the bluegill are up shallow and the bass are going to be shallow. Bluegill aren't always up shallow. Depending where you live, the majority of the bluegill might actually be out deeper. I know where I live here, once the water temperature really starts to cool off, there are not many bluegill at all on the bank. They'll go group up really tight down in 25, 30 feet of water. And from that standpoint, that's where a lot of the bass are. So depending on the time of year, depending on where you're at, depending on the type of fishery it is, if you can break down the vegetation, break down the forage, and break down where the rock or hard bottom areas in your lake are, you're going to put yourself around so many more fish than you will if you're just getting out trying to fish an area over here, trying to fish an area over here. You really want to take those three things, utilize it to your advantage to give you the areas that you should fish. Don't just randomly pick an area and then try to break that down and then try to relate that to other areas. You're much better off trying to understand what's going on within the fishery. Hopefully this helps. If it does, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, we'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.